Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Zoom. I see the room is filling up right now. Go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're zooming in from today. You can do that in the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom video screen. We are looking forward to today's virtual speaker series session with Kirk French. He's going to talk about a century after Nanook, documenting the life in the new Arctic. So we will be introducing him in just a couple minutes, but let us know who you are and where you're zooming in from. And thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker series. I see Teresa from New Jersey, Bob's from Pottstown, Pete from Reading, the Kaufmans down in South Carolina, Jim at Colby College up in Maine, Naomi Goodbye Fisher, she is out in San Diego. First thing in the morning, waking up and tuning into the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker series. I see Danielle in Columbia, Maryland, Deborah down in Greenville, Pennsylvania, Michelle Yates in Chicago. Thank you all for zooming in. Teresa in New Jersey. I'm not sure if I mentioned that one earlier. Michelle in Berwyn. All tuned in for another great episode. The West Coast is represented. Beth Wagner from Santa Barbara. I see Ken up in Needham, Massachusetts. Helen in Easton. Thank you all for tuning in. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session titled A Century After Nanook, Documenting the Life in the New Arctic. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom video window, and then clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the stream text link posted in the chat. We are live streaming today's presentation, and it'll be archived and available on our website after the event. Our guest today, Professor Kirk French, is a teaching professor of anthropology and filmmaker at Penn State. He has spent over 20 years conducting archaeological research in Mesoamerica that deals with the interplay between humans and their environment, specifically as it relates to water. His film projects aim to document the environmental changes while accurately telling the personal stories of those who have been directly affected by it. His first feature-length documentary, Land and Water Revisited, was nominated for an Emmy, took home several awards from international film festivals, and is currently available for streaming on PBS. The inspiration for his second film began more than a century ago. In August of 1920, an aspiring filmmaker began documenting the daily life and struggles of Inuk man and Allakariallak and his family on the east coast of the Hudson Bay. Almost 2 years later, on June 11, 1922, Robert Flaherty premiered the completed film, Nanook of the North, at the Capitol Theater in New York City. From hunting walrus to constructing an igloo, the film is an early example of salvage ethnography. Nanook was the first significant nonfiction film ever released. Its immediate success added a new category to domain of motion pictures, the documentary. Over the last 3 years, Professor French has collaborated with Inuit and Inukjuak, the village where the Nanooks were filmed, to revisit this iconic film to document the drastic environmental change and cultural changes that have occurred over the last 100 years. He'll discuss those changes and take us behind the scenes of the filmmaking process. Please welcome Professor Kirk French.
Hello. Hey, thanks so much, Paul.
Kirk, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. All right, let me share my screen here and we'll get this going. Let's see. Don't know if that worked.
It looks good.
It looks good. You can see, you're not seeing my notes.
Nope, I'm seeing the presentation.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, a century after Nanook, this project that I've been working on, and I'm going to talk a little bit of background about myself, even though Paul did a wonderful job of doing that, and then kind of how I got into this. So you can see here. So I saw some of you in the comments already were saying that you saw Nanook of the North at some point in college, and many people have. And so, yes, I'm a Mesoamerican archaeologist. That's what I am by training. I actually came up here in 2003. Wow, it'll be 20 years this July that I moved up to State College. I was only going to be here 4 or 5 years, tops. Now I own a home here, so hey, haven't left. It kind of sucks you in, doesn't it? You all of you know what I'm talking. All right, so I was doing Mesoamerican archaeology and came up here for graduate school. And while in graduate school, I got to see this film a lot. It was called Land and Water, not Land and Water Revisited. And it was a film that a professor here named Bill Sanders, Evan Pugh professor, had made back in he filmed it in 1961. And it just captured a way of life that was gone just about 10 years later, and as Mexico City exploded in population. And it was just a great ethnographic film, 28 minutes long. We watched it a lot in grad school. And I thought it'd be great to revisit it, to go back to see the changes that had gone on. It was just a one-off thing that I was doing. I didn't think it was going to alter my life, but it did, because what I realized through this project that was different for me personally than the archaeology that I was doing was that working directly with communities on this level, on something so personal as the cultural and environmental changes they were experiencing, and essentially co-producing work together, was way more rewarding for me and for the people that I was working with than the dirt archaeology that I was doing in the past. And so I kind of, well, it shifted me. I haven't put a trowel on the ground since, to be honest. And it's hard, though it is hard for me to call myself a filmmaker. But I guess that's what I do now. Well, and the reason I bring this Land and Water Revisited up is because it is the springboard. But also when we were finishing the editing, and it was late October of 2019, and me and the crew were doing editing for several days with a work week here in Penn State. And we were joking about what we got to do something else. We got to do another film. And this revisited thing has been very, very rewarding. Let's do another one. Well, what film would we choose? Well, Land and Water, well, a lot of anthropologists had heard of the film, but it really wasn't like a famous documentary by any stretch of the imagination. So we jokingly said, well, why don't we do the first documentary ever made? And so we kind of laughed about that. And I'll just be honest, it was about midnight or 1 a.m. when we came up with this idea. And it was just kind of a joke. And then I went to Wikipedia immediately and realized that Robert Flaherty started filming Nanook of the North in August of 1920. So remember, this is late October of 2019. In other words, the 100th year anniversary of the beginning of the filming of Nanook of the North was just like, 8-9 months away. And we realized that it came out in 1922. So we had just a couple of years. And really just that night, we kept thinking maybe we could pull this off. Like, it's a 100th anniversary. And that's a big deal. First 100th anniversary of the first documentary film, one of the earliest ethnographic films ever made. So that's really what happened. I immediately started trying to I'd never worked in the Arctic before. The Inuit is not my background. Like I said, I'm a Mesoamerican archaeologist. But I started contacting the leaders of the community and up in Inukjuak, which is on the east coast of Hudson Bay that you can see here on this map. And because the race was to try and see at the time, this is again, October 2019, November, December, in that range, right? And I talked to them, they're open to this idea. And the plan, we had lots of plans at the end of 2019. If you can think back to, that seems like 8 years ago. The plan was to get a grant, make this film, start filming in August of 2020, and then film for a year, and then put it together. And then on June 11th, 2022, do the premiere of A Century After Nanook in the village of Inukjuak. I got the grant from Penn State Institute of Energy and the Environment. I found out in late February of 2020, and you know the rest. Obviously, all of that did not occur because of that nasty little pandemic that we have gone through. But I was dedicated to this project, as were my Inuit colleagues. And so to stay on task, and we could not get up there, the world was shut down, we shipped camera equipment to the Inuit so they could begin filming on August 15th, 2020, 100 years to the day of when Robert Flaherty arrived in Inukjuak. And here's some of the team here. These are some of the elders. Somik that you see here, and Caroline has helped with the filming. Rhoda here, she is the director of the Avatak Cultural Institute. Janice and Sarah Lisa are also helping in more ways that I could possibly get into. Contacting the Avatak Cultural Institute was important because they are a center. Someone had asked a question that was submitted of kind of some areas where people could donate money or to support ideas that I'll get more into later. But the Avatak Cultural Institute is one, and like I said, Rhoda Kokiapak is one of those, is the director of that institute. And Sarah Samisak is another that recently, in the past year, has been extremely helpful, and I wanted to bring her up too. But this has been it was already going to be a collaborative project. Land and Water Revisited was collaborative, but this pandemic, and I know I think most of us have been able to find, because this is how we adapt as human beings, we find some silver linings to things that happen. So it helps us adapt. And there have been silver linings to the pandemic. All of us have experienced some changes in our lives that have been positive. I wouldn't say it's been all positive at all, but there are things that we find. For this particular project, this is one of them. This made it hyper collaborative because it wasn't just us working together. It was them taking the complete lead at the front end of this, project. So I finally got up there when Canada allowed for vaccinated passengers to travel, and they opened the doors, opened the borders up in July of 2021. So I was able to finally go up there and meet with the people that I had been working with via telephone calls and letter writing, because at the time their internet service was so poor that Zoom was all but impossible. So we were doing that, and then finally I got up there and spent 2 weeks filming as much as I possibly could. But again, I went by myself because the pandemic and the problems of travel, I wasn't able to take the entire crew. And then I wasn't able to go again because I teach here at Penn State, and I wasn't able to travel up there. But we started planning. The elders invited me to. I was the only non-Inuk member of the Nanook Centennial Planning Committee, and the idea was to plan a 5-day event that started on a Tuesday or Wednesday and led all the way up until the Saturday or Sunday, June 13th. But on this, or June 12th, but on June 11th was the big day that was kind of leading up to this. And on the exact moment at 7 o'clock at night, the same time that Nanook of the North premiered at the Capitol Theater in New York City on June 11th, 1922, we screened Nanook of the North in the village of Inukjuak at that exact moment, to the hour, to the minute of when it premiered in New York City, with about 450 people of the community there. And you can see a picture of some of them here viewing it. Another thing that I did was they brought me up about a month earlier than I had planned, because they wanted me to have something a little more completed. And so what happened is I had made like a little 3 to 5 minute short that I had played to some funding agencies and things like that. And they wanted my my colleagues on the committee, the planning committee, wanted a little more, something longer, something 20 or 30 minutes long. I was like, God, that's really long. Like, I don't have that much footage. I only been up there one time by myself. They said, we'll come up early and we'll help you come up and we'll put you up and film as much as you can and get as many interviews as you can. So I went up there in early May of 2022 and filmed for a solid month and then edited like crazy for about 5 days. And my colleague, Neil Hutchinson, a filmmaker down in North Carolina, came up and was helping me film and helping me edit. And we put together this 21-minute clip. And we aired that, and I was very nervous because, you know, we're showing this footage that to this entire community, and we're hoping. I'm working and collaborating with my Inuit colleagues, but we're hoping that the community is going to be receptive of what we've put together. And so it was really an opportunity to show them the quality of what we're doing, the cadence, the message that we're trying to get across. And if they're not okay with that, I'm not moving forward with it until we make it okay, until we work on this thing together. So we aired that first, and then we showed Nanook of the North, and it was quite a moment, I tell you, to see, to be in a room with 450 Inuit while in this village where Nanook of the North was filmed, watching them watch Nanook of the North, and it was electric, and I can talk about that in the Q&A afterwards. But what I want to do now is, you know, there was no way for me to show this 21-minute clip to you because it's too long and wasn't going to be able to do that. But I'm working on another project right now with, I've been contracted by the Smithsonian to work on a project with the Coast Salish in British Columbia. We're starting that project at the end of July. I'm going up there for about 10 days. And they have some funding agencies, and they contacted me and they said, that 21-minute clip is really long. Can you cut it down a little bit? Like, you know, so we can pass it around to some potential funders. And I said, yeah, it's going to be kind of hard. It'll be kind of clunky, but I can still tell the story, but I'll cut it down as much as I can. So yesterday, as of like 5 or 6 o'clock, I cut this thing down to about 8 minutes. And so no one has seen it actually, except me and you. So I'm going to share this 8-minute clip with you right now. I'm going to share this and hope that it all works out. Let's see if this works.
Augusti 1920 Robert Flaherty nalunertio hatausimavok ullutamat inusinganik angutiup atiliup Allakariallak tasiuyaktuak nuiviani. Ak arumak okasak na aniguliktuk Juni 11, 1922 mi Nanook of the North unikkaak inusok mi nallinnermilu ukiurtatullarimmi sivulipami takutsautitaujuvinik aulayorpimi Capitol Theater mi New York mi. Mahaitsuni aivigassuartu aputimillu illuleornik uuttuutiharsimayok Inuit iliq usinginnik aulajuulio risimayonik takutsautitautsutik. Nanook tak amioksilaktuami sivulipautsutik pimmarinnik suliyunik takutsautitausimayut. Pitsiamarinninga ilitsiviusimayok iyatautsuni nutaak nuitausuugusitillugit. The documentary.
The first ever documentary in the whole world, filmed here around this area, and it's wonderful.
Tana ulumi pinaswaktak ak ari 100 anigotilertilogit nanok kinguningani pigialaok simayok November 2019 me. Dura kalawyog takunariala ng mikta kuninga ilitang natunik awlayonik ammalo naloner tulugit avatiog ammalo ilo kusiog asitsipalianinginik inutnuami ak arit 100 anigoktilogit. Inuit Inukjuak ilek iguti haksimayot 100 akaonik kingunagmi taymay daw tsutik nakunagmon isumagiyang innot suling nito ni kanataw kawamangata.
Family members that were first to relocate to the high Arctic. Some of them were forced to go live on the islands, going to residential schools and being impacted many generations later. They killed off all our Eskimo dogs, you know. So here we have threefold traumatizing events. So it's a culture that has changed quite a bit.
No nakakatuwin no nalingit ukiok tatumi ipiusun ni Paul Mayot silak juale mami. Sukko daw yahang limit silaw asitsipalianing ano.
I was still planning to go camping by snowmobile, but I had to go down south for work. And I kept my snowmobiles on the ice because it's not going to be there for a matter of weeks. But by the time I got back the week after, the ice was gone. The snow was gone. In a week. I've never seen that.
It's a hydroponic system inside the container where we can grow leafy greens. We haven't been doing this for too long, but we're really excited about what's happening inside.
Through thick and thin, through celebratory times and more sad times, Inuit, they continue.
We survived the hardship. We survived the genocide attempt. It cannot be done. So every society is important. No matter which culture you live in, everybody is important. Every one of us is given a chance to be here on this earth one time. So make the most out of your one time on this earth.
Wolves don't live by the rules.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Want to say a few more things here before I wrap it up. The plan with this documentary, obviously, those were just some clips out of the 21-minute short that we made, and that was made specifically for that event, that June 11th, the 100th anniversary event. The full-length documentary, the hour-long documentary, is projected to be done and premiered in Inukjuak in the fall of 24. We have more filming happening this winter, in fall and winter, more this summer, and then we'll start the whole editing process next year. And so that's the plan with that. But one thing I forgot to mention, a very important element of my work, of this kind of work and Land and Water Revisited, and the same thing we're doing with the Coast Salish, is this concept of, we're revisiting other films, but what we're doing is we're utilizing that product, that film from the past, as a starting point, as a conversation starter to talk about the changes that people are experiencing, both cultural and environmental. If you walk into a community and you want to find out the changes that are going on, and you just start asking people, what changes are you experiencing? The responses are going to be all over the place. They're going to be personal, they're going to be political, they're going to be all over the place. But to help focus a community on the changes that are going on, if you have the same starting point. So the methodology is that you bring everyone together, the community together, for a particular event. With Land and Water Revisited, we had translated Land and Water from English into Spanish and did viewings all throughout the Valley of Mexico, the Teotihuacan Valley, and the community members came and saw that film. And then we interviewed them afterwards. And so in other words, you're using this film to elicit responses. Same is true for Nanook of the North. Yes, Nanook of the North is a very important film, but that's not what this documentary is going to be about. It's going to be about the changes the people are going through since that came out. Land and Water Revisited. It wasn't really about Bill Sanders, and it wasn't really about it wasn't about the film. It was about the people and the changes. Same is true with the project we're working on. So this idea of using past films to elicit responses of the changes they're going through is the methodology that I'm really trying to capitalize on. And then lastly, all of this work, I started off this talk with saying, and Paula did the same thing as a Mesoamerican archaeologist. All this work has actually changed my career in the sense of not just what I study, but my title. I was recently hired here at Penn State as a new tenure line assistant professor. So come July, I'm no longer a teaching professor, but I've been hired to continue doing this type of work. And I am spearheading a new initiative here, or a lab called the Corva Lab. It's the Community Oriented Research in Visual Anthropology here at Penn State. And it is going to be centered around training graduate students and undergraduates and working with other faculty to utilize visual anthropology with the communities that they're working with, so that those kind of collaborations can happen and that kind of reciprocity can continue with whatever kind of research it is that we're doing. So I wanted to point that out too. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for hearing me out. And I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Kirk. It was a great presentation. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
There are a number of questions coming in, but let's start with, there's a lot of questions around climate change. So how has climate change impacted the Inuit, and how are they adapting?
So, one of the main ways in which, and I can only speak a little bit about the Inuit just in this particular reason. Ungava Peninsula is the big peninsula that comes up between the Atlantic and Hudson Bay. And I've only had experience in this one village of Inukjuak. And granted, I've interviewed them about these issues. The main thing is the way in which it changes their hunting and fishing strategies. What climate change has done, and in the full 21-minute clip that I have, there's a lot more about that in there. And it has to do with the thickness of the ice. The ice doesn't get as thick as it used to. And what happens is it remains thinner and can melt faster. And what that does, though, it kind of is a really weird thing, is that when the ice is there, you can use, well, you would use snowmobiles today, but in the past you would have used sled dogs. And the thick ice can support that. Well, when the ice melts away, you use canoes or kayaks to access all the islands and access all that. But when the ice remains thin for so long, you can't access anything by snowmobile, and you can't access anything by canoe or kayak because it's still frozen. It's just too thin. So it creates this period in the fall and in the spring of this thin ice that equates to what they say is about 6 weeks where they don't have access to certain areas, hunting and fishing areas that they normally would have in the past. So that's one of the major changes. And then also I'll add some of the, even when they do have access with canoes, when the ice finally does melt, things like Arctic char, which is a type of fish that they really love. It likes really cold water. It's steadily moving further and further north in Hudson Bay to get to colder water. So they have to go further to get it, meaning they have to use more fuel to get to the fish, meaning they're adding back to the loop of greenhouse gases, right? So it's a mess. But those are some of the main things that I can think of.
So I think Jim has a great question here. Can you compare the changes over the 100 years in the Arctic, not just environmental changes, but if there are some that you want to point out, like encroachment of development, but also like social and technological changes with those? So first of all, can you talk about the changes in the past 100 years and then maybe compare to other locations around the world that you've studied?
Yeah, I mean, one of the changes with this particular, with the Inuit that's so drastic is just how recent it is. There are very few true hunter-gatherer groups really left on the planet. I mean, there are some, but it's very, very sparse. But what happened with the Inuit is they were forced to be sedentary, and being out on the land is what they refer to as healing, because they're able to get out with families for extended family groups. In the past, they would go out all summer and they would stay gone. This is even like a couple of generations ago, but they have to make money now because their lives depend on currency. And so they have to be sedentary and they have to have jobs. So they can't go out for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks at a time because they have, just like us, we have to have jobs, right? But they didn't want to do that. They were forced into that situation. So that creates a lot of trauma. There's a lot of other things that have happened that Simeone mentioned in that interview, which was, the killing of the sled dogs and the residential schools and things like that, hire relocation program. But yeah, technology has helped with some of that in some ways, because there's, more access to healthcare. There's internet, which helps with communication. There's GPSs, which help them when they do get lost out on the landscape, which, talk to the elders, they never got lost in the past because they knew their way around. But the younger people don't know the way around as much. They rely too much on GPSs. So there's a funny story within that too. It's just like how we used to really be good at knowing how to get somewhere when we used a paper map. But now if we don't have, our phone doesn't work and we're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to go. It's kind of the same kind of joke about that. But I think that the technology in some ways has helped, but in other ways it hasn't, just like everywhere else in the world. The last thing I'll say about it is the guy at the end, Somik, he's the one who said, we only have one time on this earth, make the best of your one time on this earth. He told me in an interview, he said, the thing is, when we had dogs, he said, we never got stranded on the ice. He said, it happens a lot. Like, you're out there and your snowmobile won't start and your satellite phone is dead and you're 20 miles from home, and dogs, that didn't happen to, I mean, like, if your snowmobile breaks down. So the technology seems great, but if it breaks, what are you going to do? So you can see kind of the both sides to a lot of this, but for the most part, it's on the negative side of what's occurred.
You mentioned that the Inuit have to now earn money. What do they do to earn a living? What sort of jobs are available there?
So really, just about everything that's here. I mean, from teachers to nurses to construction workers. So there's another big job up there that quite a few people have to do is there are sewer trucks and water trucks, because every house, they're very modern homes, like just like ours, except the difference is because of the cold, you do not have running water that goes underground or above ground because of the freezing. Same with sewage. And so if you ever had if you've ever traveled in a travel trailer or something like that, you know, like a camper, you know, you have a sewage tank and you have a water tank. Well, those have to be, the sewage has to be removed, water has to be put into these tanks that are in these nice homes. And so that's happening all the time. Garbage pickup, but water, sewage delivery, yeah, just normal things. City, I mean, repairing the roads, all that kind of stuff, working at the airport, just kind of normal jobs.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the filmmaking side of this. When you go into an indigenous community like this, I would imagine that a lot of care, a lot of thought is put around telling the story in a way that honors the community that you're featuring. Talk a little bit about that process as a documentary maker and how you make sure that what you were doing was honoring the Inuit.
Well, yeah, Paul. I mean, the thing is, I think unlike a lot of other filmmakers, I don't really come into any of this with some kind of preconceived narrative of the story I want to tell. I want it to unfold with these interviews of like, I just want to know about the changes, but from their point of view, not mine. And you're right, there's a lot of care that goes into it, because I don't view this as, I mean, I might be one of the producers on it or whatever, and the director of it, but this is co-produced. I mean, like, I'm not going to finalize anything until they've seen it and they've approved it. And so that narrative is really built between, but a balance between, you know, what the community thinks is truthful and the way in which it's presented is going to be palatable, you know, for the larger public. Right. And so that's really it. And so, I mean, granted, this is only my second big film project, so it's all really new to me. And I've learned so much, and working with the Inuit has been so drastically different than working with my Mexican collaborators. The level of distrust between for colonials like myself is very different with the Inuit than it is in Mexico, and which is totally understandable. I mean, like every time white people have come up to that region, it's been bad, you know, bad things have happened. Right. And so there's been a lot of, you know, but they knew from the way I presented it that we were going to do this thing together. It took a big, you know, it's another good thing that COVID happened. Not in a big scheme of things. I wish it didn't, but I mean, like for this project, it allowed for a longer period of trust building that occurred, because I didn't just hop up there immediately like I would have if it wouldn't have been for COVID. Please don't take that the wrong way. Like, I'm glad COVID happened, because I'm not. But hope that answers it.
You made an interesting choice in the documentary to shoot as much of it as you possibly could in their native Inuit language. Talk about that choice and why you decided to go in that direction.
Yeah, great question, because we did the same thing with Land and Water Revisited, where instead of just doing it in English and then subtitling it in Spanish, we made two completely different versions. And so we made a Spanish version where the few English speakers are subtitled in Spanish, but the narrator, it's a completely different narrator. I narrate the English version, of a Spanish speaker narrate the Spanish version. So completely different. Same with this. what we decided to do was, instead of making 2 versions, the whole thing's just going to be in Inuktitut, because it's just out of respect. I mean, to me, the film is really, it's something I want. If they are proud of it, honestly, that's all I really care about. I mean, I would love for it to, I don't know, win some awards and more people see it and that kind of thing, and it's really broadly viewed. But I think it can do both. I think that there's a way to make them proud of what they helped produce, and it needs to be an Inuktitut. And it was also a conversation with them early on. They asked, and I said, well, I think I would think that it should be an Inuktitut. And they said it absolutely has to be an Inuktitut. And I said, good, okay, great. That's where we're gonna go. So that's what we did.
So Pat's asking about what you may or may not have left behind with the Inuit. His question is, I imagine the video capabilities of the locals was enhanced by the filming you were unable to get there. If true, did you leave equipment there for them to continue to film? Is the equipment still there?
Yeah, they're still filming. Yeah, so some of the film, so another little methodology that I've been using with this is, honestly, if you have an iPhone 8 or better, it shoots in 4K. There are nice little gimbals, and that's not what we're using most of the time for most of the filming. And there are nicer cameras that we left with them. But the thing is, what's great about this thing to use is when you sit with an elder, like with an older person, or literally anybody, most people that sit down in front of a camera, it makes them nervous. You got this big camera and it's sitting there on a tripod, and like you've been wired up. But everyone is used to this. I mean, this happens to us in a family every day. Every single Inuk person I know up there has an iPhone of some kind, a smartphone of some kind. And so by doing that, and there are these great little lav mics that plug into the phone, and then you have a wireless lav. And so they've been filming elders and stuff like that. And that's the other part, is by them filming, it makes the interviewee much less comfortable when they're being interviewed by someone that they know. They're being interviewed by their grandson or whatever, right? I mean, and so, yes, the answer is yes, we left equipment up there. There's a large external multi-terabyte hard drive that things are being downloaded on. And we're going to get together soon in the fall and look at some of the footage and translate some of the footage together.
Excellent. If people want to find more information about your work, or more specifically on this topic, where can they go to find?
Sounds weird saying it, kirkfrench.com. Yeah, there's a tab there for Land and Water Revisited. There's a tab for Century After Nanook. Yeah, so you can go there to find out more.
Final question. Were any of the descendants of Nanook involved with the film?
Yes, of Nanook. So Nanook's real name is Allakariallak. Nanook was a made-up name. It just means polar bear. And so that wasn't his real name. And so we thought that one of the guys that was in the film that was helping us was a relative, but we found out he was not. So we don't know of any of his relatives that are still alive, but several of Robert Flaherty's children were involved with his Inuit children. So Robert Flaherty had a lot of, if you've seen Nanook of the North, the 2 women that are in it that are supposed to be Nanook's wives, they are actually not his wives. They're both Robert Flaherty's common law wives. And one of them, Nyla, she was actually pregnant at the time when they were filming with Robert Flaherty's daughter. So he had a whole host of, I'm not going to get into the deep ethics of that right now, but right. He had a whole bunch of children in different villages that he'd worked in over the years. And there were about 35 Inuit Flahertys that came to this event to celebrate. So some of Flaherty's, but none of Nanook's.
Interesting. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Professor French for joining us. I also want to thank all of you who have tuned in here today for the virtual speaker series. As a reminder, you can view a full listing of our events on our website, both online and in person at alumni.psu.edu/events. Thank you again for joining us and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.